The winter of Arkhangelsk was merciless. Snow stretched endlessly across the horizon, swallowing every sound in its frozen grip. The wind howled like an old ghost wandering through the pine forests, rattling the wooden walls of a solitary cabin. Buried in white, inside lived a man the world had almost forgotten, a veteran, his beard heavy with frost, his eyes weary from battles both seen and unseen. He had once known the chaos of war, the roar of gunfire, the cries of comrades. Now, silence was his only companion. Days bled into nights, nights into endless days, each one colder than the last. The fire in his hearth burned weak, much like the fire within him. Loneliness pressed in from every corner of the cabin, but he endured it the way soldiers endure pain, quietly, stubbornly. He had chosen exile, yet deep within, a hollow ache whispered, "No one can fight alone forever." That night, as the storm raged outside, the veteran sat by the dim glow of his fire, listening to the endless howl of the wind. Then, through the shrieking cold, another sound broke through. Faint, fragile, a whimper. At first, he thought it was the echo of memory, the kind that haunted him in dreams. But then it came again, clearer this time, desperate, pained. He rose, pulled on his heavy coat, and stepped into the blizzard. Snow blinded his vision, but instinct guided him forward. A few paces from the cabin, he stumbled upon a sight that froze him more than the cold ever could. 5 German shepherds, collapsed in the snow. Their bodies shivered weakly, their fur crusted with ice, streaked with blood. Soldiers once, he thought instantly, or strays abandoned to die. For a moment, he hesitated. Bringing them inside meant risk, disease, danger, responsibility. But as he looked into the dim, flickering eyes of the nearest one, something stirred in him. The same unspoken plea he had once seen in the eyes of wounded comrades. Without another thought, he bent down, lifted the first dog, and whispered through clenched teeth, "Not tonight. You're not dying out here." Inside the cabin, chaos met desperation. The veteran placed the first German shepherd near the hearth, then returned again and again until all 5 lay on the wooden floor, their breath shallow, their bodies trembling. The room filled with the smell of wet fur and faint traces of blood. He moved quickly, tearing old sheets into bandages, stoking the fire higher, melting snow in a battered pot for water. His hands, though scarred and stiff from years of soldiering, worked with surprising tenderness. One by one, he checked their wounds. A gash across a flank, a paw twisted unnaturally, frostbite creeping along an ear. He muttered under his breath, speaking to them as though they could understand. "Easy now, hold on, comrades." The words surprised even him. He had not called anyone comrade in years. As the hours dragged, exhaustion clawed at him, but he refused to stop. Sweat mingled with the frost in his beard, his breath ragged. The fire roared, casting shadows that danced across the cabin walls, shadows that reminded him of battlefield tents lit by lanterns. Each time a dog whimpered, he remembered the cries of wounded men he once carried from the mud. He fought then. He fought now. As the storm battered the cabin through the night, the veteran found himself staring at the 5 dogs stretched across the floor. Their labored breaths rose and fell in uneven rhythm, like soldiers in a field hospital clinging to life. He sat by the fire, but his mind was far away, in deserts, in forests, in war zones that never left him. Faces of comrades appeared in the flames, men who never returned, voices that still echoed in his dreams. He remembered dragging bodies under gunfire, the helplessness of watching life slip away despite everything he did. The sight of these dogs clawed at those memories, forcing open doors he had tried to seal shut with silence and isolation. One of the shepherds stirred, its eyes flickering open. For a moment, their gazes locked. Something unspoken passed between man and animal, recognition, perhaps, or shared survival. The veteran leaned forward, whispering words he hadn't spoken aloud in years. "You're fighters, just like we were." In that moment, the cabin no longer felt empty. The ghosts of the past still lingered, but they no longer pressed with suffocating weight. Instead, there was a fragile thread of connection, one that bound him to these broken creatures and to life itself. The blizzard eased by the 3rd night, leaving a silence so heavy it pressed against the cabin walls. The veteran stepped outside to gather firewood when he heard it, low growls carried by the wind. His blood chilled. From the tree line, shadows emerged, eyes glinting in the moonlight. Wolves. He gripped the axe in his hand, every nerve alert. He had faced enemies before, but this time it wasn't bullets. It was teeth and hunger. The wolves circled closer, their snarls slicing through the quiet. Inside, one of the German shepherds stirred, the weakest of the five. With trembling legs, it dragged itself upright, then let out a hoarse but defiant bark. The others responded, forcing their battered bodies to rise, standing shoulder to shoulder despite their wounds. The veteran froze, astonished. They weren't cowering. They were defending him. He stepped back into the cabin, wolves pressing closer. Then, with a fierce resolve he hadn't felt in years, he flung the door wide, standing beside the shepherds. Together, man and dogs faced the pack. The wolves hesitated, sensing strength where there should have been weakness. For the first time in a long while, the veteran didn't feel alone. He felt ready. The days that followed carried a different rhythm. The wolves never returned, but their presence had changed everything. The veteran began each morning by tending to the dogs, as if they were soldiers under his command. He boiled broth from scraps, carefully fed each one, and cleaned their wounds with the precision of a medic. Slowly, strength returned to them. Their eyes grew brighter. Their tails began to twitch with faint signs of life. When the weakest of them finally managed to walk across the cabin without stumbling, the veteran found himself smiling, an expression he had nearly forgotten. He spoke to them often, sometimes in clipped commands, sometimes in soft whispers. They listened, their ears pricking, their bodies leaning toward him as if they understood every word. In the quiet hours, when loneliness once gnawed at him, the cabin now echoed with low growls, playful nudges, and the sound of 5 steady heartbeats. It was no longer exile, it was a unit, not comrades of war, but of survival. Each night, as the dogs curled around the fire, the veteran sat with them, feeling the warmth seep into the hollow places of his soul. They had chosen him, and unknowingly, he had chosen them. One morning, as pale light broke over the frozen forest, the dogs grew restless. They paced near the door, whining, nudging the veteran until he reluctantly followed. Snow crunched beneath their paws as they led him deeper into the woods, their movements purposeful, as though they carried a secret. For nearly an hour they pressed forward until the trees opened into a small clearing. There, half buried under snow and forgotten by time, lay an abandoned supply shed. The veteran's breath caught. Inside were crates of canned food, medical kits, even blankets, resources that meant the difference between survival and despair. He sank to his knees, snow stinging his skin, overwhelmed by the impossible timing. The dogs circled him, tails wagging, eyes bright, as if they had always known. In that frozen wilderness, it felt less like chance and more like providence. A miracle delivered by 5 wounded angels. The cabin no longer felt like a tomb of silence. Each day began with the shuffle of paws, the eager bark of recovery, and the loyal eyes that watched him with unshakable trust. The veteran found himself rising earlier, walking further into the snow with his new companions at his side. Together, they hunted, gathered wood, and carved out survival from the frozen land. But it was more than survival, it was purpose. The loneliness that once gnawed at him had been driven out by 5 guardians who had chosen him as their leader. In their presence, he no longer felt like a man waiting for life to end. He felt like a soldier again, not of war, but of hope. One evening, as the dogs curled beside him near the fire, he whispered, "We'll face whatever comes together." For the first time in years, he believed it.